Welcome back for another installment of Political Breakfast. We are so glad that you're here this week on WABE. Ben Burnett filling in for Brian Robinson this week from the Ben Burnett Show, a podcast dedicated to Georgia politics and other things. Of course, Tharon Johnson, our Democratic strategist, with us today. Hello again. We had some good talk about President Biden earlier this week. And I just want to throw it out there. You know, Kamala Harris is also in the news just as much as President Biden has been in recent weeks and making as many headlines. And a lot of people say she's ready. She's ready. And if she's ready, why not? Why not Kamala Harris? So I just want to throw that out there and get your thoughts on that. Tharon, you want to start?
Well, Lisa, earlier this week, a lot of our loyal listeners said, I can't believe you didn't take a shot at B-Rob for being out on vacation, because every time you go somewhere, he's talking about you're on the island or you're playing golf or you on a PJ going somewhere. So I got to take a shot at B-Rob. I mean, I guess what happened then is that
he's somewhere.
No, he went to Cancun.
I don't know.
That's not even safe.
Yeah. Oh, is he Cancun? Yeah.
Well, look, he I definitely can tell you. Well, we know B-Rob loves a deal, so I'm sure he definitely didn't spend a lot of money. But no, I hope that he's listening and getting some much deserved rest, and I know he's definitely got him. He loves his Tito's, so I'm sure he's got him a little Tito drink somewhere. All right, Vice President Kamala Harris, Lisa, let's just take it there, right? So you have this woman who's from California. Who started off as a district attorney, went on to become a U.S. senator, was a viable presidential candidate, right? Along the campaign trail, had some stumbles, but there was once upon a time where actually then candidate for president Kamala Harris was actually leading in some key states leading up to the president. And then ultimately, did not win the nomination, and President Biden selected her as his running mate. And what did she do in 2020? Having the first ever African-American Jamaican woman on the team with the Biden campaign was a good balance, because she brought along the West Coast, sort of helped him in the Western states like Arizona and other places, but she also helped him in the South. She's a Howard University graduate. And in the fact that she was a black woman, you saw women rallying behind her, similar to what you saw around Michelle Obama. A lot of us forget this, Lisa, but Barack Obama became more of a viable candidate to us, not because of the convention speech, not because of his performance in Iowa, but it was when black women started to say, you know what, I like Michelle. You learn more about Michelle Obama. So you knew that his wife was, number one, real, from the South Side of Chicago. So Kamala Harris is a real woman as well, from California, and has done a great job in helping get this president elected. All right, fast forward to her rollout. She was supposed to be the person that was the czar and the leader on immigration, right? And had a couple speeches. They went okay, and then just disappeared, right? They did. I'm just going to just shoot it straight. And so I think that it was a missed opportunity for the Biden administration, Harris administration, to really uplift her in a way to sort of counter, because it was a tough issue. But then what we've seen lately, she's recovered very well. She has been out on the stump for the president, not just in black areas, but all across the United States, focusing on southern states. I mentioned earlier in this week that she was at Essence Festival, and she's able to articulate and crystallize to women and minority voters why they should reelect her as vice president and the president as president. So let's go to how this process will happen. You saw the vice president come out right away and say, look, I'm not going to even talk about it. President Joe Biden is the nominee. He's the leader of the free world. Yeah, very classy move. Now, her defense of him in the debate night with Anderson Cooper on CNN was one of the best that I've seen. Republicans would tell you, they like to talk about the way she laughs and how she clap backs, right? Well, I like a black woman that clap back every now and then, because, I've been having black women clap back on me my whole life. So us black men seeing a black woman clap back or push back, on live TV, we like, oh, we kind of like that. Some people may actually think it's sexy. Some people may think it's strength. But there are Republicans that think that it's, unearned, or it's arrogance, right? So what you saw Adam Schiff on Meet the Press this past weekend said that he believed that Vice President Kamala Harris would win the race overwhelmingly. Now, I respectfully disagree on what the congressman sort of choice of words there was. Now, so you can be for Kamala Harris and think that she could, if she was selected to run the race. Absolutely. I do believe that. I believe that if Joe Biden, now I'm not saying he should or will, but if he say, you know what, look, I'm not going to run for president, and there's no way you can skip over her. Like if you skipped over Kamala Harris to even be considered to be the replacement, you're talking about, and Ben talked about this earlier in the week, that Democrats usually get in line, and we're kind of fighting a little bit now. You're talking about a massive war within the Democratic Party. You let Joe Biden decide to not run for president, and then people just dismiss Kamala Harris. I mean, you're going to see people rally around her in a bad way. So I think we got to prevent that from happening.
It was kind of happening, though. When you start hearing all these other names, and Ben, you kind of pointed that out too. It was kind of slowly happening. I'm like, wait a minute.
Well, she and her team put a stop to it. Now that doesn't prevent other people from saying it, but I'll close with saying this. I think that Vice President Kamala Harris is qualified. I think that, she definitely has been by the president's side. She's competent. She's ethical. And I think she's a great debater. I mean, we won't have to worry about her at a debate. I think one of the things we will have to probably do is not over-prepare her to say too much. But the fact that we're having this conversation, it's not that it's going to happen. This is just sort of a hypothetical situation, Lisa. And I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk about this. But the one thing the vice president has got to do, in the time where Biden is still recovering from the debate performance, and he's on the stump now doing a better job, she's got to figure out a way to continue to raise her profile. And in her debate performance, right, her debate performance is going to be even more scrutinized, whoever the former president picks as his VP nominee, because I think she'll be able to show the American people that, hey, the president may not be able to do as well as he used to do in debates, but I can articulate to you the Biden-Harris agenda. I can tell you that I'm there and making sure that she's highlighting the record. So, her time is not yet. She's young. She's got time. Maybe 4 years from now she'll be considered as president. But right now I think she's going to stay where she is and support President Biden and really more so make sure that she doesn't give the Republicans an opportunity to make this about her. We need to make this about Donald Trump and how they're better than the alternative.
Well, there are people saying 2 years in.
Well, okay, and last thing, and Ben, I'm sorry. Now, Ben,
thanks for having me today, guys.
But listen. That's on a lot of Republicans' mind. This is why this podcast is number one. I'm going to say we're number one in the region, right? Because you get it here. Right. Yes, Lisa, there are a bunch of Republicans who do not want to vote for Joe Biden because they're afraid that if you give him 4 more years, he may not make it. Therefore, she will become president. And I just think that you just got to call it what it is. Yeah. But as Democrats, we got to let that motivate us to say there's that's a real possibility, right? But any of us, nothing is promised. Tomorrow's not promised. Yeah. But there's a quiet storm of talk amongst the Republican Party. That's one of the reasons why they don't want Biden to have a second term because of Kamala Harris.
But Ben, let's get you in here. What are your thoughts about all of this in terms of Kamala?
One of the things I really marvel at with Democrat politics that the Republicans don't really have is the racial identity. We don't have – there's no HBCUs in the Republican Party. Like, there are Republicans that vote in favor of funding them and that, but it's still an arm's length transaction, and I don't know another way to say it. It's not something that we have a tie to. That will resonate with a lot of black voters, most of whom identify as Democrats. The question that I have, if I were Tharon or if I were running the Biden campaign or the Harris campaign or the DNC, whatever it is do you want to win by 1 with Kamala Harris, or do you want to win by 10 with somebody like Andy Beshear, John Tester, Joe Manchin, that crew? The Democrats would tar and feather any of those 3 guys over the racial component that we talked about. And you guys, we're all friends. That does not exist in the Republican Party. Tim Scott lost and nobody said the Republicans are a bunch of racists because we put Donald Trump back up there. The Democrats would have an entirely different conversation if Vice President Harris were to be passed over. I also think that there are some internal things in the California hierarchy of political discourse that would candidly like to see Harris run on the ballot because they think she will lose and it would clear a field for Gavin Newsom in 2028. And Harris would then move on into on the speaker tour and doing Netflix specials and things like that. So I think that there's always the game inside the game that is extremely interesting, and I am very grateful to sit on the right in the current day and age and watch the Democrats circle the wagons and shoot at each other, because it is about to be incredibly interesting. Because President Biden, if he is going to save it, first and foremost, he's got to find that cognitive ability soon. It is July, and it is something that he has to do. But if they are not going to go with Harris, they need to be prepared for what is going to happen. Or do the Democrats know the polling numbers? Maybe you guys can still pretend to be excited and go out there and campaign. But if they know that President Biden or the Democrats are going to lose in 2024, they keep the ticket intact, they take the loss, and they preserve everything else for 2026 and 2028.
Yeah, Lisa, I'm an old school guy who just believes in the process. And Ben, I would tell you this. I would be saying the same thing about Kamala Harris if she was a white woman. I think race has less to do with it. But I know what you're saying, because we are a party that has a significant majority of our voters that are people of color, particularly women of color. You do have to note that. But I think that you cannot skip over a vice president in the conversation. And I don't think anyone is suggesting that happens. I'm just warning Democrats that if you were to do that, and I mentioned this earlier in the week, we also got to talk about the delegate process, because if Joe Biden were to say, okay, I don't want to run anymore, then he has to send a signal to his delegates to say, hey, look, pledge your support to someone else. Or he may say, and again, I hate even talking about this, Ben. You got me talking about this possibility because I'm supposed to be all in, united.
If you're explaining, you're losing, Tharon. You know this.
Head down.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't understand that the delegates play a
and that's what
role.
And that's what our listeners say to us sometimes too. It's like, we get what y'all talking about. We'd love to hear, you and Ben and Lily and Brian, as well. Talk about issues, when Saba's on, but we want to know about the process. So no, the process is simple. Right now, Joe Biden has enough delegates to become the Democratic nominee at the convention and to be nominated as our guy. If he were to say, I'm not running, he could say, hey, I'm just going to allow my delegates to pick whoever they want. Or he would have to encourage the delegates to pledge their support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I mean, it's just we don't have enough time. I mean, this is the fact, because I know that the delegates will now be submitting their pledges, and most of them are going to be Biden loyalists. The one thing that the Biden campaign did very well, Lisa, is that when the delegate process was going on in these states, they made sure that these folks were Biden-Harris loyalists, right? And now look, the primary conversation, the fact that we did not have a primary on the Democratic side, that's fair. But I still think that Joe Biden would have beat everyone who would have ran against him in the primary, because the power of incumbency, and Ben knows this,
it's absolute.
It's absolute. It doesn't miss. It's undefeated, right? I mean, if you are an incumbent president, the amount of resources, that you can raise. I mean, the president, nobody's talking about this, Lisa. The president raised $38 million after the bad debate performance now. And I think he said he had over 1 million donors. And so that's real money. So people are putting their money where their mouth is. But Ben touched on something that I want to respectfully disagree, but also respectfully agree. I disagree that it's all about this reckoning that could happen just because Kamala's a black woman. I think that I would be saying the same thing if she was white, Hispanic, or Asian. But I do agree with him that, she does bring a significant amount of support. And Lisa, you and I talked about this. There are some people in the African American community that will support her, but they're not just as enthusiastically about her as they should be. I've had to talk to members of her sororities sometimes. They come on, and this is your soror. Y'all need to be all in with her.
Right. But it's changed. Yeah, but that's changing.
That's changing because why? She's earned it. And that's my whole thing. The reason you got to consider her and you got to make sure you put her name in the hat in the process is because she's earned the right to be vice president. Yeah. And you don't hear scandals, you don't hear corrupt things coming out of her administration. You don't, her and her husband Doug, they're all committed to reelecting this president.
Yeah. And someone said to me, you didn't hear people talk about Al Gore this way. What's Al Gore up to? Is Al Gore ready to be, step in and be president, or even Mike Pence? So why are
Dick Cheney?
Yeah, why are folks doing that to Kamala Harris?
We'd have been fighting everybody if Dick Cheney had taken the reins.
It just isn't fair. It just really isn't fair. So, yeah. So, I think a lot of people have stepped back from that and realized, she's in a tough spot and she's done a good job.
And it's historic. She's the first woman vice president. She broke that barrier.
Right.
And you're right. And Ben, jump in here. I would say that women are treated differently in this country than men. And sometimes women are harder on other women than men are.
They're mean.
So
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But I definitely think that, we live in a very male-dominated society.
I have no idea. Yeah.
We got to stop that.
It is,
right. Well, quickly, before...
I was just going to say, when you talk about the glass ceiling that gets broken, and it's a lot of the women in general are very good at getting together for the big public campaigns to sit there and push initiatives and things like that. But you don't see men treat each other as poorly as you get in sometimes with the competition between women. I think sometimes that my friends of the other sex got to look at each other and realize, like, man, we got to stop pulling each other down all the time. We can't just keep blaming all the men all the time.
A lot of people are watching. Yeah. Quickly, before we get out of here today, what are your thoughts ahead of the Republican National Convention? What do you think we're going to hear? What do you think we're going to see, especially with all that's been going on this past week with the Biden campaign?
Ben, I'm sure you know more about what's going to happen, sort of procedurally and sort of the tone and tenor going into the convention. But the one thing that's keeping me up at night a little bit, Lisa, and I like to do my research and read up on things. But this Project 2025 is something that I think is going to come up, not just at the convention, but you saw it in the talk shows this past weekend. Trump had to come out and say that he doesn't. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, I guess he doesn't support it or he's not, endorsing it. But there's some very scary things that this project is there. And it's called a Presidential Transition Project, Project 2025. And it's talking about things like cut Social Security, cut Medicare, defund the FBI, Homeland Security, use the military to break up domestic protests. I mean, it's just like 4 things that I mentioned like out of 30. And so I think that will the Project 2025 folks make a play at the convention? Will we see more of what we saw in Nashville, Tennessee, when you have these patriots who are marching for America in the streets? Like how are you going to keep the MAGA sort of movement together when I think there's a lot of different factions within the Republican Party that I think will probably be exposed at this convention?
Project 25, it says dismantling the administrative state, defending the nation's sovereignty and borders, and securing God-given individual rights to live freely.
So if you add all those things together, they sound like really good sound bites, and they sound very, very hard. It sounds like a very hard thing to find 218 votes for in a U.S. House. And there are a lot of people, the most detestable group of Republicans that I get to talk about my own family now, are the people that throw rocks at everybody and everything and provide no solutions. I do think that the American people, by the time we get to 2025 and 2026, you saw with the IMF last week, say that the biggest issue facing first world nations is that the debts and deficits that the first world countries are racking up are going to make it unsustainable moving forward, and there is a reckoning coming. The IMF, by no stretch, is a right-leaning fiscal watchdog in global politics. If you look at the ringleader of that, it is the United States of America with the world's largest economy, and I think that a lot of the stimulus and a lot of the social programs, it's not that it's going to be unpopular. It's going to be unrealistic to expand them. And that is a losing issue when you talk about raising a Social Security age like Emmanuel Macron did a couple years ago in France, and he had riots in the streets. But the truth is that America has real problems, and there is a party in this country with the Biden-Harris administration that wants to continue to forgive student loans and put things on the backs of taxpayers of future generations. And if the Republicans actually want to be who they used to be as the fiscal conservative party it is time for that message to find itself, because the economy in this country may still seem fine, but we do not have the balance sheet and the credit worthiness that we did in 2016. And both administrations are responsible for that.
All right, that convention kicks off next Monday, July 15th. So I'm sure we'll have some thoughts after that. Ben, always a pleasure. Thank you for stopping by and sharing your thoughts with us.
I love your show. You guys both need to come do mine. It would be fun. I'd love to listen to both of your stories. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for stepping up. And Brian and Lily, we missed you, and we'll see you next time. And Tharon, thanks so much, and we'll do it again soon.
All right, thank you, Lisa.
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you, Ben.